Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tau November update from the development team. You're here with me, Fola, and the rest of the team. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to Karim for his overview for the month.
Thank you, Fola, and welcome everybody to the November update. On the TML side, Juan has continued his work on the built-ins for arithmetic transformation or bit universe transformation, and he's also taken over Mauricio's work, who unfortunately has left the team. Lucca has finished his implementation of a persistent and canonical union-find data structures for his 2CNF extraction that he's been working on since he started. He also implemented a canonical shared data structure for 2CNF as well, and continued his research on AGDA. Tomasz has made some big accomplishments this month with his delivery of an updated TML IDE, Integrated Development Environment. You can find it, and we encourage you to play with it at tml.idni.org. You'll find the latest version of TML and all the sample codes that you can run right from your browser. But okay, so that's been updated to the latest version, where he fixed many compiler warnings and a few bugs with the command line options, and he continued his work on persistence as well. On the parsing of TML side, Umar started working on the early parsing techniques that Ohad recommended, and thinks that it's going to be very beneficial for TML. He worked on techniques to extract the parse tree from the early parser, and fixed some bugs with null symbol processing. And he's also started working on the method to visualize the parse trees, which should be very helpful. Andrei, on the Agoras Live side, has been working on refactoring the backend with an eye towards DevOps issues. And so he separated the database server from the backend server, the application server, to make it easier to scale the application when we go live. He also wrote finished writing the Swagger documentation for all the backend to make it easier potentially to switch front ends, or to make it easier to implement several front ends to the application, including mobile front ends. On my side, I've been working on fine tuning with Fola. Actually, like you mentioned, I've been working on interviewing several candidates. We've had several job offers out there on all the recruiting websites. But yeah, we're looking for several candidates, like Fola said, and we've interviewed quite a few this month. I've also been working with Fola on fine-tuning our financial model and pitch deck. That's it for this month.
Great, thank you very much, Karim. What I'll do now is I'll pass it over to Professor Benzmuller for his thoughts and overview for the month.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Well, I have a couple of bullet points I've been working on this month. One was a study in Isabel Hall in parallel to the two others, Enrico, and of course the long-standing proposal by Ohad on how we could go with the consistency predicate. The modeling I looked at there to get an alternative view to the existing proposals, but in the end also share some commonalities, was to actually provide the consistency predicate at an outer layer, so the higher layer of a logic, and then make it usable at the object language, but without being a primitive notion at the object level itself. This can get us out of a trouble similar to the other approaches, which do something not so different, namely also to provide a notion of a layer of a logic that comes without a consistency predicate and then adds that on a more abstract layer. So there are commonalities which we then also discussed about in the academic panel. And I think that we have reached some interesting conceptual agreement that this kind of separation, where the consistency predicate is provided and not provided, and where it can be used and not be made explicitly available as a primitive notion, that we have certainly some commonalities as also then detected in the academic panels. On the other hand, I was working on an encoding then of this alternative proposal, which is actually very close to Ohad's approach, Rudiano approach in Isabel Hall. So Enrico presented an alternative depiction of this approach, and I was able to relatively quickly encode that and also provide a short documentation. I also wrote a document of the first part, which was then uploaded in Slack, and did some experiments there. I'm still working on that because there's an interesting question whether the hypothesis we have that there's a restriction in a variable assignment to base logic layer possible or not under well-foundedness conditions, and I'm still working on that proof. I thought I should be done by today, but I wasn't until 12 o'clock noon today. We'll continue to look at that, whether I can formally do that, just to get assurance here. Well, I mentioned the academic discussions were participated, but I also compiled, as we agreed last week, to get an overview on papers on related papers on contract languages, and a document which I uploaded that provides such an overview of the state of the art in contract languages and other projects, including projects like Ethereum or others. And this is available in Slack. And I studied on the MSO side where to start with in terms of choices about the basic concept. So which signature to choose, whether I should support primitive notion of functions, because that has an implication on how rich my encoding language has to be. And I haven't made a clear decision yet, but I need to come to that before I then can enter more implementation. It also depends a little bit on essential choices in the project, because you want to have that aligned. So before you say I want to provide a notion of MSO and implement it, it should be clear whether we, for instance, natively want to support primitive function symbols or not, and so on. So that was a long talk, and I think I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Benzmuller. I'll pass it over to Dr. Markus Cramer for his update this month.
Yes, so I will report a bit about some of the things we have attained this month in our academic panel discussions, focusing on some points that were not fully described in detail by Christoph Benzmuller right now. So so one thing that has been become clearer this month is that the different approaches that have been developed by different members of the academic panel, including Ohad himself, really kind of complement each other, rather than so rather than having to choose between one of those approaches. I think we now understand better that we have to combine them to get the best of each approach. And so let me just sketch briefly what I mean by that. So we had, for example, so Ohad had for a long time proposed a method based on Boolean algebras to avoid certain problems that we have to deal with when developing the logic of the tau system, in order to enable talking about its own consistency, its law of changing the law, how users can change the system from within. And recently, Professor Enrico Franconi formalized a somewhat simplified fragment of Ohad's ideas, and in the discussion about that formalization, it became clear that this approach is really necessary to ensure that the semantic definition of the quantifiers in that logic is a well-founded definition, so that we really have a clear semantics here. That was something that, for example, my previous approach was kind of overlooking that problem. So it has become clear because of that we should probably combine these different approaches, because there's still other things where my previous approach does certain things that Ohad's approach does not deal with properly. So I think the take-home message here is really we need to combine these things. So this is something I think that we will be working on in the next few meetings that has come out of what we've recently done. So yeah, I think that's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cramer. Allow me to put it over to Tomasz for his update this month.
Thank you, Fola. Hello, everyone. Regarding IDE, I've added more settings into the settings tab. These allow to enable some new features, including state blocks and bit universe. As Karim already said, I've deployed the current version of TML and more regression tests and examples to tml.idni.org. So anyone can try these features in their browser right now. Regarding TML, I fixed behavior of TML when there's an unknown command line option. I've removed some compiler warnings. I've added a build option, build.js module, which builds an ES6 module, which works well on the web. And also I've continued to work on persistence. So that's all from me this month.
And Juan, thank you very much. Over to you. Tell us what you've been up to this month.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Fola. So this month I kept working on our built-ins and on the integration of the bit universe transform. Particularly, I have been addressing some issues that we had there in one of our arithmetic built-ins, in particular the addition of BDDs. So I have fixed completed actually the design and implementation of that feature with the new comprehensive tests, which are already committed into the repository. So in that sense, we are extending our arithmetic capabilities in a way that are compatible with the bit universe transform. And this is in different ways making TML stronger at its handlers feature, which we also call them built-ins. So this work will keep going. This work will keep going with also integrating the bit universe transform with the novel BD less or equal operator. And we also have in there a multiplier also over BDDs, and we are looking forward to grab and to make it compatible with this binary universe transformation that Umar put together a couple of months ago. And finally, I have been also reviewing some of Moody's efforts where he detected some improvements to be done in our core libraries in terms of performance. So I've been also following that work in order to make us sure that we are not losing anything there. So I've been also paying attention to some of the core BDD operators that we have already in our engine. So that's all from my side for this month, and thanks for listening. Bye.
All right, thank you very much, Juan. Great update there. Thank you very much. All right, I'll put it over to Lucca for his update this month.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. So this month I've continued to work on the 2CNF universe. So the 2CNF extraction feature also suppose that we can somehow store the 2CNF that we have extracted from the BDD. And to do that in an economical way, we need new data structures. A 2CNF is or can be seen to be composed of an equality part, a constant part, so variables which are just true and false, and implications. And if you And each of these things are very useful to have right at hand. And so we are storing them in these three different ways. And now for each different way of storing it, you need a good storage way. And so what I've been doing this month is I've created a nice storage for the equality part, which consists of a persistent canonical union find data structure. And then for the constant part, so the true and false, this is simply sets. And so what we want is to have a shared canonical set union, the shared canonical set data structure. So these two are in place. The one for the implications is for next month. And then on another side, on my type theory journey, I've been diving more into AGDA and really getting used to writing AGDA code. This has been a fun journey, and yeah, this will also continue next month. And that's it for me for this month. So I'll pass it back to Fola.
Thanks very much, Lucca. Andrei, how are you? Tell us what you've been up to.
Hello, everyone. Last month I finally finished the very important part of our Agoras Live development, which is writing a documentation to our Agoras Live backend. Also, I did a full refactoring of Agoras Live backend code. Now it's clean and it's well structured, and it will allow us to get more developers working on Agoras Live with that readable code. And the documentation part, the Swagger documentation, now it opened us a very important path, not only to do a testing the right way, the testing of Agoras Live, but also it now we can easily switch, for example, front end from what we now have to some other front end, because we have the well documented backend. And also now we can develop a mobile application and connect to our backend. And in not that far future, because Agoras Live backend was built with the idea of a stateless system, in some not very far future, it will allow us to go to a fully decentralized system where Agoras Live backend and front end will run on a user side without any servers, centralized servers. But for now, also last month I separated completely front end, back end, and database among different servers because we're heading for a production, and this architecture will allow us to easily scale the system according to user load. So that's pretty much it. It took a lot of time, of course, to do all these things, but finally it's over, and I'm looking next month to give away that documentation to a tester to test our Agoras Live platform, and then we will have to beta testing, closed public, and then to the production. Thank you, everyone, and see you next month.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Umar, tell us what you've been up to this month.
Hi, team. So in the earlier weeks of this month, I've been working on visualizing the proofs that we get from the TML. And I've also found a few bugs with the null grammar production when it gets translated into the proof item. And these proofs can be visualized as a dot file. So this has been checked into the master branch. It can be used by anyone who wants to look at the visual representation of the proofs. So second thing I've been working on is understanding the LA parsing techniques. The challenge has been how to extract, how to convert the recognizer into the parser. So, so the literature underreports the work on this conversion, and yet there are some blogs and papers and material that mentions how to do that conversion. But there are some points that I discovered while going through that were missing, and we need to take care of them while building the parse forest from the early items. So I've started implementing with the first version of the approach that I have in mind. So the coding is going on, and it's based on the Ohod's recognizer code that he shared. So hopefully this will be completed, and I'll be testing it with some basic examples and some complex example as per in the literature. Yep, that's it from my side.
All right, last but not least, Ahadasaur, how are you? And let us know what happened this month for you.
Well, to not repeat everything said, which I've been involved to a large part, I also dealt a lot with how to turn our logics into logics that specify programs in the specific sense that that works for us, so we can have a consensus-oriented programming and so on. We need to study the existing approaches in the literature, but I also sketched a new approach that are based on our assumptions that we can have as input and output logical formulas, and building on that, I could add a form of comprehension to our languages, comprehension as in the comprehension axiom from set theory, so in this sense of comprehension. And so this might be yet another approach to consider of how to specify tau in tau. And that's all.
Great. Thank you very much, Ahad, and thank you to the rest of the team. Great to see you all, and great to see you, speak to you guys watching the video. And we appreciate your questions, and we'll see you on next month's update. Cheers.